Well, welcome to today's episode of InfoSec Journeys. Ashley and I are super excited today to be joined by AJ Yawn, someone who is a cybersecurity enthusiast with a very rich background in information security. Someone who's very popular on social media, especially LinkedIn, talks about information security mindset, skills, abilities, all the rest of it, which we're super excited to explore further with you. And also peel back your kind of mindset with respect to your career history. You have a very interesting and unique InfoSec journey that we're keen to explore today, AJ. So why don't I throw it over to you for a brief introduction, tell us who you are and what you're all about.
Yeah, definitely appreciate it, Colin and Ashley, the opportunity to speak with you all today. So I'm AJ Yawn. I'm living here in Miami, Florida. So weather is great for me most of the time of the year. I'm originally from Southern California, so I'm used to good weather, I guess, throughout my whole life. But I'm working now, I've been working in the cybersecurity industry for a little bit over a decade. Some of that time in the U.S. Army, and another time in cybersecurity consulting. And spending a lot of my time lately now just giving back. I feel like I've gotten a lot out of this industry. So spending a lot of time volunteering as board members and doing a lot of mentorship, and then we'll dive into the long part of my journey here in this conversation. But really, just passionate about cybersecurity and passionate about getting more people into cybersecurity. I think it's an exciting field, a growing field. So anytime I can talk about it and opine on cloud security and cybersecurity stuff, I'm excited. So thank you for the opportunity.
It's no problem. Yeah, we appreciate you coming on. So, what is the current day? What does it look like for you? What's AJ's day at the moment? Professionally.
Yeah. So the most important thing for me professionally is my kids. I'm a father. I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. So my day oftentimes starts with me trying to make sure I wake up before them. But, waking up with kids talking to you as you're still wiping, your eyes isn't a great experience. So, I try to wake up before them to get my day started, which involves working out and meditation as well, which I think has been very helpful for me in the information security field, which we can definitely get into. And then from a professional standpoint, it's a lot of time giving back. Like I said, I'm working on a sort of a secret project right now, but I'm also doing a lot of mentorship and a lot of time volunteering my time to talk with people that are getting into the industry, as well as helping organizations. And I've had the luxury of being able to grow pretty fast in my career and learn a lot. So I figured there's nothing better than giving away my knowledge. And that's really what I've been spending this last few months doing during this coronavirus pandemic is spending time and giving knowledge to either companies or individuals and just sharing as much as I can. So it's a lot of time doing that and a lot of time playing with AWS. I really love the cloud, and I love exploring and doing lab experiments and things like that. So I'll spin up an AWS environment and try to play with a new service. Just yesterday, I was working on some remediation using Security Hub, which is a pretty cool service that I hadn't had a chance to play with. So a lot of experimenting and a lot of time with my children as they've been home for the past 6 months or so.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, waking up, I don't think I've ever woken up before my children, to be honest with you. No, never. So you put there was some really good comments you made there about meditation that's helped you through your cybersecurity. So is that what's sort of motivating you? Is that, that meditation phase, or, what's it for?
Yeah, it's really just the whole thing about meditation and what you're doing while you're meditating was being present in the moment. And trying to strip away everything else that's going on in your life, everything that you're thinking about, and just really focus on being there in the moment. And I think the act of doing that and starting my day that way allows me, as you're going through this field and dealing with all the technology that we deal with, it can be overwhelming. It can be consuming as well, to where you're like, there's so much to learn, there's so much to do. And as a cybersecurity professional, we have to be right 100% of the time because we're trying to protect systems. A bad actor or a hacker only has to be right once. So if you think about that pressure where they have an unlimited chances to get it wrong, and we have a very small window where if we make one mistake, it's pretty big. So there's a lot of pressure in this industry. So meditation for me helps to keep me centered, help me keep me focused on just being in the moment and keep my mind clear. It's been a helpful practice. I haven't been always great at it. I think I really started meditating consistently probably about a year ago. And there's sometimes where I'll go to meditate and I literally cannot stop thinking about something else. And I'll spend 10 minutes just thinking about other things. So the cool thing about it is it's a practice. If you ever hear somebody talk about meditation, they don't say that they're like an expert in meditation. They just say they do meditation practice, because every single time you do it, you're practicing it again, and you're trying to get into that moment. And I think staying present in the moment is helpful, whether it's cybersecurity or really in any aspect of life. Even as a parent, it's really helpful for me to stay present in the moment and lock in on whatever I'm doing, whether it's with my kids in the industry or elsewhere.
Cool. I mean, yeah, that's amazing. Kind of some insights there. So you mentioned having children like myself and Colin, and one of the things that I found having two young children is actually getting that self study in outside of work, because you have those children to also look after, and that other responsibility. So how have you kept knowledgeable, or how have you done that with two children and life and a partner and everything else you've got going on?
Yeah, it's hard, but there's a few reasons why. I think a lot of people think that I'm this overly motivated or determined person, but a lot of it is me trying to like fight my own insecurities. Like I want to make sure that I know as much as possible, and I'll just keep studying and learning until I do. And it's because I want to make sure that I can be educated about what I'm speaking. But it's hard to do that with all the things you said, with work, with kids, with making sure that you're being a good spouse, making sure that you actually have a life outside of this stuff. All of these different things that actually matter. You have to make sure that you kind of carve it out. And my military background, and my dad was in the Marine Corps for 20 years as well. So I've always been around the military and always been around this structured lifestyle where you plan things and you execute on your plan. So I'm very calendar driven. If I put it on the calendar, I'll do it. And if I don't put it on the calendar, chances are it won't get done, no matter how many times I talk about it or who I talk about it with. So a lot of times it's just scheduling it. And one technique that I'm definitely happy to share that I've leveraged that has helped me a lot, it's called the 90-91 technique. And what you do is for 90 days, you spend the first 90 minutes of your day just accomplishing one thing. And if you do that for 90 days straight, where you don't focus on anything else, you don't do email, you don't do Slack, you don't do anything, don't do LinkedIn, none of that. You just spend the first 90 minutes of your day focused to get one thing done. The amount of things that you get done in a 90-day time frame is ridiculous. Because if you think about it, 90 minutes is a pretty long time. It's a pretty decent amount of time to get something done, or at least make significant progress on something. And being able just, again, it goes back to the meditation idea of you focus, you get present, and you lock in on one thing for one short period of time. You get over 90 days, that's a lot of time that you spent just focusing on accomplishing on one thing, and you get a lot done. And I found that I've been able to, another thing is, I wake up before my kids, so I'll work out, I'll meditate, and then I'll get my 90-minute window in. And before my kids have woken up, I've worked out, I've meditated, and I've got something done for my day. And it's like 7:30 in the morning, which is, it's huge. It's a great way to start the day. So I think, and a lot of times I focus my education and upkeep on studying and reading in the morning time. That's usually where I spend most of my time, because by about 2 p.m. my brain's not really working that great anymore. I kind of deteriorate as the day goes along mentally. So it's about scheduling it and then kind of setting that scheduled plan to get stuff done.
So do you get up at 7:30, or are you done by 7:30?
Yeah, so I'm done by 7:30. I'm usually up by about 5.
Nice.
Yeah, somewhere between 4:50 and 5 a.m. I try to wake up. I've tried to get, and that back to the military. We had to wake up every day early to do physical fitness, and that was something that you become a robot sort of. You just wake up and you feel weird if you're not up that early. So it's been helpful to keep that up even after I left the military.
Yeah, absolutely. And you were a captain in the military, right? And I worked for a major American bank a few years ago, and I found actually there was quite a strong influence in information security from people who'd worked in the military, veterans, ex-military personnel, etc. And the kind of mentality and the frameworks and the mindset that those people brought to the same kind of structure in information security was really beneficial to growing and developing the maturity of the business. But I don't see that, if I'm honest with you, I don't see that an awful lot in the UK or outside of the US. I think the US really does that a lot. Is that kind of what you see as well? Or?
Yeah, I think there's been a big push for veterans into cybersecurity just because of current veterans in cybersecurity. I think we just keep reaching back because we see what you just described, a lot of the skills that we're learning. And I think it really goes back to leadership and problem solving. In cybersecurity, whether you're an analyst or whether you're the CISO, you're in a leadership position in the organization because of how important cybersecurity is. So you have to be comfortable being able to tell someone that may be at a higher level than you or in a different position than you or in a different department. You have to be comfortable going to them as a SOC analyst, like, hey, I saw this pop up. What's going on? And most of the time, military members are okay doing that, especially in the U.S. military, because we've had to do that for a very long time. You start your military career with someone screaming in your face and telling you that you have to start from nothing, and you become very humble, and you're able to stand up for yourself and look someone in the eye and say, this is what's going on, and be very clear and direct. And I think those leadership skills translate well into cybersecurity. And in cybersecurity, all we're doing is problem solving. Whether that's you're on the defensive side or the offensive side, you're solving problems, and the problems are evolving daily. And I think in the military, that's what we did as well. We were constantly solving problems, whether that's personnel or whatever mission we were on. So the skills translate very well from the U.S. military into cybersecurity. But I think the big push and the more folks we see in the U.S. military in the cybersecurity industry is because of this camaraderie and the network of veterans that try to pull up other veterans, which is great to see. Like I've been pleasantly surprised through LinkedIn of how many veterans give back and help other veterans get into the field and how helpful other veterans are. When I was getting out of the Army, I went back recently to look at all the messages I was sending to people 4 years ago, different veterans. And I didn't even realize it at this time, but I was talking to heads of security at Apple, heads of security at Equifax, and they were just responding to me and having conversations with me. And I didn't even realize who they were coming out of the military. I didn't know that these were like high positions. I was just like, hey, this guy was in the Army. I'm in the Army. Let's talk. And they just talked to me and helped me out. And I went back and looked at the messages. I'm like, wow, it's a true fraternity. It's a true brotherhood. And when they see this field that you can get into the barrier to entry, I think in cybersecurity, it seems high, and we can talk about the hiring stuff, but I think it's actually not that high if you do the right things. If you pursue the right certifications, if you network with the right people, you can actually get into the field. And the military helps facilitate a lot of that training as well. A lot of those certifications are paid for. There's training available for people to get those certifications. So it's a lot easier to spend some time as you're getting out of the U.S. military and dedicate 6 to 9 months to learning about tech and investing in yourself and in programs, which helps you be successful when you get out.
That's cool. I never knew that the US military did. Do you think that is they've seen what the Israeli military do and see how well that they've trained their force in cyber defense, and how the amount of people that go from the Israeli military into cybersecurity is quite high. So I can see why they're doing that. Do you think because of your Army background, entering into cybersecurity has been maybe not easier for you, but the mindsets that are required by hiring managers you already have because of your background? Do you think that's why it is? Because what I'm trying to figure out is, if someone that hasn't been in the military wants to go for the same role as you, do you have a natural advantage over them?
Yeah, I think it would depend on their experiences, but I think the advantage for military members is that it's the experience. It's you're able to take being in a really tough position, really tough situations, and figure out a way to get through it. And you have these critical skills that are only developed by being in hard situations that you can't really teach. You can't really teach, navigating how to go tell the CEO or the colonel that he's locked out again. And the reason that he's locked out is to click that phishing link. That is a tough conversation if you've never had to do that before. And it's a tough thing to get through if you've never had to do that before. And I think there's so many more. That's a very, basic example, but there's so many things that you experience in the military that you're able to display in an interview with a hiring manager, and you're able to share. I think the first job that I got at when I got out of the military as a cybersecurity consultant, I only met, I think, 2 out of the 5 requirements on the job description. I think I had the CISSP and I think a degree was the other one that I met. The years of experience, the actual knowledge in a certain framework, I didn't have any of that. But the conversation that I had with the hiring managers, I talked a lot about my leadership experience. I talked a lot about my problem-solving skills. He was also an athlete, so we talked a lot about sports. So there's a lot of things. So your point, to your question, Ashley, I think, not necessarily a natural advantage of if you're in the military and you're not. I think it's how do you communicate your experiences to show some of these skills that are important in cybersecurity, problem solving, critical thinking, having initiative. I think that's one of the biggest things in cybersecurity because of how technology's changed so often. You have to have initiative. You have to be willing to go out and learn new things without somebody telling you. And that's something that military members have to have often because it's a part of your training process where you're just told, hey, go figure this out. And you don't get a lot of advice or guidance. It's just go figure it out. And that's that happens in cybersecurity. I think you have to figure a lot of things out without a lot of guidance or advice. So those skills translate, but I don't think it's proprietary to the military. Everyone has these skills, and a lot of times I talk with people and they don't realize that skills from other fields translate very well into cybersecurity. You just have to kind of peel it out and figure out what those skills are and demystify what cybersecurity is.
And your degree was a Master of Science in Technology Management, right? So how did that? I'm keen to know how that kind of translated into the real world as well. I mean, I guess I often see job specifications with a degree as a requirement. But actually, they don't specify what the degree is in. So you can have a degree in one field, but actually you're working in a completely different field. Is there a disparity between academia and what real life InfoSec is?
I think there is. So my master's, this is a great question. So my bachelor's degree is in social science, which I really can't tell you what I studied at. Or people at Florida State won't want to hear this, but I was an athlete. So, it was a different experience for me. I'll just say that academically. And that was my degree. That was my undergraduate degree. And I didn't have the master's in technology management when I first landed the cybersecurity consulting job. So to your point, having the degree was the check block, not what the degree is in. The reason I pursued my master's was because I realized I don't check the block of having a technical degree if I want to move up and elevate myself in careers and reach higher level positions. So I was like, let me go get a master's that actually says that I have this academic block check of being in the technology industry, because I was like, that's the one thing missing from my resume. And one of the things I have done in my career, and I think it's valuable to share, is I think about myself or my resume being in the pile. And I'm like, what can you do to stand out to take yourself in this pile and put yourself in this pile? So it's like, get a cert. So now I'm in this pile now I'm an Army guy with an AWS cert. And there's a few of us there. Then it's like, okay, now get a master's. Now I'm an Army guy with an AWS cert and a master's. And keep getting the pile smaller and smaller and try to just keep chipping away to where, you know what, I may not be the best candidate, but I'd rather be making the decision between 1 out of 5 people instead of 1 out of 200 people that also have the same cert. Give myself a little bit of a better chance. So the master's was solely for that. It was literally to check the block. Luckily, I went to a good school. I went to Georgetown University, and I actually learned a lot. It was actually really valuable, and because they had a lot of instructors that were from the industry. So one of our instructors worked at Deloitte, and he taught us federal IT consulting, and that was his job. He was literally running their federal IT consulting practice. So our projects, our lessons were from real world experiences that he was going through. Which was really cool. And I took a few system requirements, software requirements classes, which really helped me understand how to evaluate DevOps and change management and compliance assessments, because I went into the nitty gritty of like actually what goes in before we even get to development, what goes into like the system requirements, what goes into those conversations. And I learned that. So it was valuable, but if it comes down to it, and somebody's like, if I'm starting out in InfoSec and should I go get a degree or should I go get some certs and get active on LinkedIn? I'm gonna say get some certs and get active on LinkedIn, because by the time you finish that degree, stuff you learn may be outdated. It's solely based on the quality of the program and who those professors are, and you can probably go land a job and have your company pay for your degree instead of you pocket, and because these degrees are expensive. And if we have seen anything during COVID, is they're going to continue charging the same amounts despite not having the same resources available. So I don't know if it's a great investment right now to invest all of that money into getting the degree. I think with colleges, people think about college and university as you're getting some education out of it, but I think that's like one of the smallest things you're actually getting from the school. The network is really important. The resources that you get, if you're actually leveraging the resources. That's one thing I did at Georgetown that I definitely didn't do at Florida State, was I went and talked to the career teams. I went and used their writing departments. I went and talked to professors' office hours and built relationships. And I think if you do that, the 4 years at a university is worth it, because the relationships that you come out of there are going to help you be successful. But if you solely go to college to learn about cybersecurity, I don't know. I don't know if you're going to actually learn that much.
Yeah, I can imagine if you applied the 1991 mindset whilst you're at university, right, during those office hours, if you're doing one thing, you've got 90 minutes and you're smashing that relationship networking building, the amount of hours across 4 years is just astronomical. So yeah, that's awesome to hear about. So what was when you kind of transitioned and made the leap, right? You joined Coalfire, a cybersecurity consultant. What did you think? What was your first impressions of the landscape of information security? Was it like, oh shit, I should not have made this move, or actually this is a whole opportunity here for me to come and explore and learn?
At first I was overwhelmed. It was like, have you ever seen teaching a kid to swim? And dad is kind of savage, and he just says, all right, son, you're going to learn to swim. He just throws you in. That's how I learned how to swim, and that's how my son has learned how to swim too.
I'm a swimmer as well. You can see all my swimming gear in the background here, so I resonate with what you're saying here. Yeah.
Yep. So that's how I felt. I felt like that kid that just got thrown into the deep end of the pool and is trying to figure it out. Coming from the military and into the private sector and seeing all of the technologies in action that you read about while you're studying was eye-opening. I remember the first time, so the way that it worked, Coalfire was great. I learned so much. And when I joined Coalfire, I was in a small SOC 2 practice where we focused on SOC 2 assessments. There was about 9 of us. When I left about 6 months ago, there was well over 100 of us. And we were doing ISO 27001, HIPAA, high trust, a bunch of different assessments. So I was able to grow a lot. And when I first started, we weren't as big as we were when I left. So there was time for me to onboard and take my time and learning the frameworks and things like that. So the team did a really good job of getting my feet wet and started, but you don't really know until you're sitting in front of a client. And you look at the client and the client starts talking about something and you literally have no idea what they're talking about. and that's when it hits you and you're like, okay, this is different. And that happened to me. I still remember it. I was in Denver, Colorado. It was my first ever on-site with the client. I was with my boss, who I had never met in person, because they hired me remotely. He was based out of DC. This is my first time ever meeting him, and we're in the on-site, and they start to go deep into the cloud, and I'm just like, oh my God, what did I get myself into? I have no idea what's happening. I don't know what they're talking about, and it was overwhelming. I spent that entire night in my hotel researching virtual machines and researching. I think it was Docker was what they were getting into, and just trying to figure out what was going on. Because coming from the Army, I had no clue about any of this stuff. And it was actually, it felt like I'm a little weird, because like when a challenge like that comes up and I feel like I'm drowning, my reaction is to not to get out of it to the point where I don't want to do it anymore, but to dive even deeper in and to figure out more about it and say, you know what, by the time we go and have this conversation tomorrow, I'm going to be able to add value to the conversation. So I literally stayed up all night researching so that I could add value the next day in the interviews. And when I realized that all it would take to be successful in this field is just a little bit of self-effort, like doing some extra studying on my own. And that's when the gear started to turn. And I'm like, oh, I can actually do something really well here. And I think the turning point for me was AWS. I looked around about a year into my time there at Coalfire, and I realized most of our customers were hosted on AWS, but we didn't really have any AWS experts on the team. We didn't have anyone that really knew how to dive into the details of AWS and get into the security of setting things up and being compliant there. So I took that as an opportunity, and something I encourage everybody to do as they're at companies or different organizations is look around and see, where is the company going? Where is your organization going? What technologies are they using? And if there's no experts around, it's a lot easier for a company to bring you up as an expert than hire a third-party expert. It's going to be cheaper for them, easier to onboard. It's going to save them a ton of time and money. So if you become an expert on the technology that the company's using or will use, you become really valuable. And that's what happened to me. I learned about AWS, became extremely obsessed with it, and started studying like crazy and producing training and documents and things for our clients that helped me become invaluable, and then also helped force me to remain sharp. Because when you become known as the AWS guy, you want to actually live up to that. So now every time AWS drops a new service, I had to like study it and learn it, get my hands dirty to make sure that when a client asked me if they should use this service to meet a particular control, I actually knew what I was talking about. But you know, the feeling of not knowing what's going on and that imposter syndrome was very real for me from the beginning at Coalfire, especially leaving the military. I think it's a common feeling for people coming out of the military because you've known one way of life. Things have been kind of set for you career-wise and pay-wise and boss-wise. Everything was kind of locked in. And then you get out into the civilian sector, and now it's on you. There's no backstop. There's no government there that's going to guarantee that you're going to get paid on the 1st or the 15th. And there's new technologies, there's new processes. You have to talk to people a little bit differently. That was one of the lessons I had to learn. In the civilian world, you can't yell at people as much as you do in the military. But it's just a lot of lessons, and definitely some experiences that I think all military members feel when they first get out, of not feeling like they know quite enough, or they're ready enough. And I think that's common, and you just got to kind of push through that.
How do you? I know we've spoken about this previously. So how do you get through that imposter syndrome? Like not knowing, you said you sat there. They were talking about Docker. You had no idea what Docker was. You think it maybe it's something you put your phone into, but they're talking about things you've got no idea. And then you go back to your hotel and spend all night researching it. Yeah, your next day you're probably tired, but how do you push through that imposter syndrome and feel like you actually are adding value? And then the second point to that is, you've had that meeting, you've realized cloud is where it's at. Then, how have you then gone back into the business and saying, I'm your cloud guy, and had the confidence to do that, especially being at Coalfire? Sorry, 2 questions in one there.
No, that's good. So the first one, getting through imposter syndrome, I think at that moment is significantly different of how I get through it now. And I'll explain. At that moment, again, it's self-preservation. It's I need to learn this, because at that point, I was, I think, 2 months out of the military. And this is my first time in front of a client, and this is my first job outside of the military. So I'm like, you have no choice. You better go learn this. Like, whatever Docker is, go find out. and know a lot about it. So it was, at that moment, it was self-preservation. And I think the way that you get through it, if you're in that phase, is do what I did. Go to Google and dive in and just learn. And the more that you learn, the more confident you become. The more confident the more it's easier to talk about certain things because you know more about it. And it's easier to feel comfortable because you're knowledgeable. So we live in an era now where if you like to read, you can read. If you like to watch videos, you can go to YouTube. There's so many ways to consume information. If you just want to have it in your ears while you're running, you can do that. So there's so many ways to consume information. Not knowing information is no longer a good excuse for imposter syndrome. Like if you're feeling that way, you just got to go out and learn. Go out and do the research and do the reading, and don't be afraid to also say, I don't know. I think that was the thing that I did the next morning was I told my boss, I was like, hey man, I'm tired because I stayed up all night researching this. And I think I know what's going on, but I'm pretty sure it might come out garbled if I say anything today, because I'm really tired. And he appreciated me telling him, because he didn't even realize yesterday, the day before, that I didn't know what was going on. He was just going, he got into his flow, and he was just, doing his thing with the client. And he was like, oh, today I'll take some breaks and pause and make sure that you're still with us, which made that day so much better because I said, I don't know. So really it's two things there with getting over it is being willing to say, I don't know. And then two, go out and do the research. You can't just say, I don't know, and then leave it alone. Like say, I don't know, and then go out and do something to change why you don't know. Ask the second question again, just so that I make sure I got it.
It was about, so you've gone back into Coalfire, and cloud is your thing. So what was then you said to Coalfire, I wanted to be the cloud guy. How did you get the confidence to actually do that?
Yeah, it was really less of I want to be the cloud guy as the first thing that changed for me was learning about Trusted Advisor. I realized that in Trusted Advisor on AWS, you can see a global view across different resources on AWS. So like we would evaluate security groups, obviously checking to make sure that you're protecting from outside sources. And before I realized what Trusted Advisor was and how it worked, we would just ask for screenshots. We would say, you go navigate to your EC2 console and grab some screenshots of your security groups, send them over to us. Not knowing that if they had resources in a different region, we didn't check the security groups in that region because we were only looking at the EC2 console for one region. So we weren't actually going as deep. So again, this went back to how I battle imposter syndrome, where if I think I'm doing something wrong and I need to do it a different way, I just start screaming about it. I'm like, hey, we are doing this wrong. And that's literally what happened. Like I was sitting there, I was going through some training and looking, I was like, wait a second. And I went back and looked at how I was like, we need to change this. And I went and told people there, and we immediately began to implement it. And then from there, it just became more and more things where I would go out and find something about AWS, and I'd come back and share it with the team. And I guess if there's a lesson there is share information. A lot of people think, oh, I'm not an expert yet, I can't teach it. I was not an expert on Trusted Advisor, but I knew that there was this one specific way that we could use this service, so I shared it with everybody. Got some more feedback from the team and figured out a way to use it. But when you learn something, it's important to share it, whether that's at your organization or even just socially, like on LinkedIn. Like if you're studying for a cert, share what you're learning, because at any time, there's probably thousands of people studying for the same cert that you're studying for, which your information that you share could help some and it can definitely assist them as they're going through their stuff. So I think for me, the way that I became the guy was by educating. After I shared Trusted Advisor, I found a few other services, and then I was able to lead a training for the team at our annual team training event, and then began to also I asked to work on AWS clients only. I was like, hey, let me work on AWS clients so that I can figure out better ways for us to do this. And luckily, I worked at an organization and had leadership that supported me and allowed me to kind of grow and gave me the freedom to feel like I can experiment. That's the other thing is if you're at an organization or if you're in a leadership position, you have to let people try things and you have to be willing to let them fail. There was things I tried with clients and things I asked clients to do on AWS that they weren't going to do. But my bosses let me fail. They let me go out there and try it, and the client said no, and we knew why they said no and dove into it. But that's important. I think having that environment and that culture as well helps you to go from a lower level employee to being an expert by having that culture where it's free to create and free to innovate.
And I think just going back to what you said there about kind of sharing information, especially if you're not necessarily already an expert in it, I think that's what people tend to be afraid of, isn't it? Where and certainly I always feel like there's several elements to potential imposter syndrome. It's that if you recognize a gap in your own knowledge and you think, okay, well, I need to go and really read up on that and really learn and develop myself, and you feel yourself that you have this imposter syndrome that, okay, maybe I'm not good enough in this bit, but you've recognized it and you can go away and explore it. But then I really feel that what you said is very powerful, to encourage people to share information, because putting something out there, I felt it myself, right? In the technical space of reverse engineering malware, I feel like if I put a blog post or video or whatever out on the internet, I think someone is going to think, well, didn't you already know that? Why are you telling me about this? Are you and you haven't explained it right. So what, and it's like, it's that fear of the unknown. And I think actually the more people that do this in the industry and share their journeys and share their learnings, that people, like you said, there are thousands of people in the same position that will really benefit from that information. So, and it's something I see you do very, very well as well. So,
yeah, I think cybersecurity naturally feels like an overly critical field where you think, you're going to post something that people are just going to come in and be like, oh, that's wrong. No, what are you doing? What are you talking about? And I feel the same way every time I'm about to post, but I try to remember that it's not about me. I may be helping someone else out. And if it's just one person that I help, I think that's worth it.
How do you deal with the people that do challenge you though? There's a lot of positivity around the stuff that you post, quite rightly, because it's usually very insightful from what I've seen. But do you get like maybe the comments or the messages in the background which are a little less positive, maybe a bit more challenging towards you? How do you kind of deal with that?
Yeah, definitely get those messages. Luckily, they stayed in the DMs on LinkedIn, but we'll see if they ever populate in the comments. But I've learned that empathy is just so important, and understanding that whatever perspective this person is coming at from on this particular topic, it's based off of their own experiences and their own perspective. So I can't necessarily say that they're wrong. Because I don't know what lens they're looking through life in. And we all have our own lenses that we're looking through our life in. So we all can look at the same picture and come up with 3 different conclusions. Doesn't mean that either one of us are wrong. It just means that we're looking at it through our lens. So I try to remind myself that. I learned a lesson in the military where if we were disciplining someone, we had to document it on a counseling form. Called the EA 4856. That's insane that I remember that. It was just like as soon as I said counseling form, that number populated in my head.
Nice.
The brain is crazy. But I had a boss that told me never write a counseling statement. He was like, write your counseling statement when you're in the moment so you don't forget what happened, but don't actually send it or do the counseling with the soldier until the next morning. Because it gives you so much more clarity. Because in the moment, there's a little bit of that emotional response, like, "Oh, you're telling me I'm wrong. Oh, even if you don't want to have a negative tone, even if you don't want to be like abrasive, you're still going to come off a little bit abrasive." So a lot of times I'll see the message and I'll say, "Okay," and I'll just let it sit and I'll wait for a little bit to respond. And then by the time I come back to respond, my mind's so much clearer. I can go in actually have some empathy and take that pause. In the military, when we were training, we used to call it a tactical pause. When you're in a battle, you take this tactical pause right before something's about to happen, and that's kind of what I do too when it comes to a leadership perspective or just interacting with people. Is you have to know when to take those tactical pauses, whether that's to protect yourself or protect someone else. If someone's emotionally charged about something, I've learned to let that conversation go ahead and die, let it end. Because they're going to be right. If sometimes you're talking to someone and they're so emotionally charged about something, no matter what you say, you're like, "Hey man, your shirt's blue," and I'm like, no, my shirt is red. You're looking at it blue, and I'm so angry. There's nothing that you can say to convince me. So it's best just to end it there. Let them have that tactical pause, and then come back and have the conversation. So it's all about empathy and knowing yourself. And I know that I can get emotionally charged up, so I protect myself by not responding in the moment.
I guess that's where your meditation, no doubt, helps you as well.
Exactly.
So, from in your background from going to college and university and joining Coalflyer to where you are now, pretty much having 5 jobs, do you see any big challenges within the industry? Either through racism or misogyny, anything like that? Is there anything that you've come across, getting into the industry that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think we don't do a great job, and I don't know if it's just cybersecurity, but there needs to be more women in cybersecurity, and women's voices need to be respected in cybersecurity as well, because they're talented. One, there's not a talent problem or a pipeline problem with women in this field. There's a lot of them that are successful, talented, and should be in high positions. But if you look at the stats across leadership or CISOs out there, you don't see a lot of women. And I think that's because we've kind of guarded the industry, we guarded leadership positions, and it's kind of a good old boys club. So I've seen also just being the nature of being a consultant, which I think is really cool, is you end up in a lot of conference rooms for a lot of different companies, and you see a lot of different ways people interact. You see a lot of different leadership styles, and you see how people are treated. And one consistent thing is that women are oftentimes not heard. They'll speak, people will listen to them, but the thoughts or the ideas or the suggestions are oftentimes not heard from everybody in the room. And I think the important thing that we can do in those moments is elevate it. If you're in a room and there's a woman in there that suggests, or really if anybody it suggests something that is a good idea, but for whatever reason, because of their race, because of their gender, it's not heard. You have to say something and say, hey, well, Sherry just said the same thing, and it was a really great idea, and I think we should take a look at it. So I think that's one thing that we can do better in cybersecurity. And then of course, diversity. There's this idea that there's this talent shortage. There's 3 million jobs that are going to be unfilled in cybersecurity, I think, by 2022 or whatever the date is. And I don't think we can fill that 3 million job shortage by not being diverse, by not finding talent from all different walks of life and all people that look differently, people that came from different backgrounds. We have to become more diverse. And again, it's not a pipeline problem. It's a matter of us actively, hiring managers actively looking to build a diverse culture. And it takes effort because it's a lot easier to go internally and say, hey, we're hiring, do you know anybody? And what happens is everybody goes to the same cultures where everybody looks like themselves. So if you have a culture of 15 white guys from Kansas in your office, and you go and say, hey, 15 white guys from Kansas, go find me somebody that needs to get hired, they probably have a lot of white guy friends from Kansas because they live in Kansas. So you have to do a little bit more work than just ask your internal employees to find people that also look like them. And I think the thing that we can do in the industry and with where the world is right now is to be the leaders in this space. There's jobs to fill, and there's a lot of people that are going out there trying to train people. So why not help solve two problems at once? Help. A lot of the social problems are economic problems, and if you can get people to solve some of their economic problems and have gainful employment and have careers, which I think cybersecurity is a great field to be in. A lot of the social problems will begin to improve. So I think we have a duty to not only fix the talent shortage in cybersecurity, but also fix it by diversifying cybersecurity and making sure that we have a diverse range of voices in the industry.
I also think, personally, I also think that a lot of times I don't really feel like we have a talent shortage. I think the talent is out there, but necessarily I think businesses are looking for the wrong talent. What I mean is they're describing the talents in the wrong way. Like, I think we've spoken about it here and also quite a few other episodes of this show, is that there's so many transferable skills. If you said, oh, you're great at stakeholder management, you're great at communication skills, and you're great at leadership. Well, guess what? There are so many roles here within information security that you can come and explore, but we don't brand a role as that, and there's so many people from so many diverse backgrounds and diverse cultures and ranges of experiences that just don't, there's an education piece there to say that we need to break down these barriers of, you have to be technical, you have to know about this, you have to know about that. I honestly feel like if we help to educate or boil down what those core values are that we're looking for that make you successful within this industry, and that's part of the reason why we're actually doing this podcast, is to kind of explore what those transferable skills are, so people can say, oh, do you know what, it's actually really cool to listen to these people speak about information security, how they started, and actually where they started from was not information security, right? They started with some of these basic skill sets that I might have as well. So
I totally agree as well. So kind of closing up the podcast, so going from being a basketball player, right, to where you are now on secret projects, on every single advisory board in the Miami, give our listeners the top 2, 3, 5 tips on how you get there.
The number one tip would be other people. There's nothing that I've been able to accomplish in my life without other people. Whether that's friends, mentors, my family, someone had to help lift me up to be able to achieve something. And relationships that I've built over the course of from basketball relationships through military relationships to my private relationships now outside the military in the cybersecurity world are the reasons why I think I've been able to have a little bit of success, but also why I'm confident in my future. It's because of the relationships I built. So I think the number one thing is build relationships, cultivate those relationships, check in on people. One of the things I've been trying to do is pick up the phone and call someone. It's easy just to text and say, how are you doing? But I've been trying to call people because we need that interaction. We've all been home for a very long time. And every time I talk to someone on the phone, it just makes me feel better because I feel like I actually reconnected with someone. So I would say people is the number one thing. Number two is don't tell yourself no. A lot of things that I've done in my life have been because I decided that, yeah, I probably am not going to be able to do this, but let's just give it a shot and see. And because I didn't tell myself no, I was able to get it done and to get through it. So a lot of times people will look at a job description or look at a cert and read the guide for it, or look at a project that their employer is asking them to work on. They're like, oh, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do that. It's like, just sometimes you got to shoot your shot. You got to try. You got to go for it, and you can't tell yourself no. You can't be don't let that little no voice in your head be the reason why you don't do something. And then lastly, a core value of mine is not to take myself too seriously. So, and that helps me with imposter syndrome. That helps me with every aspect of life. And my kids help me a lot there because whenever I feel like I'm taking myself too seriously, I just go, I do this game. It's pretty funny. You guys should try it. Where if I'm really stressed about something, whether work-wise or anything else, I go and I try to have a conversation with my son about it, who's 4 years old. And obviously he doesn't care. He does not care at all. And it doesn't matter to him. But what does matter is maybe coloring or going running or swimming or whatever it is that he wants to do. And that allows me just to get back and remember what's important. And if you don't take yourself too seriously, the failures won't hurt you as much. The successes you won't get too high on, and you'll know that it's just all a part of really the flow of life. So it's something that I try to keep in mind, and it helps me out a ton. And in really all aspects is just to stay kind of light with everything, and realize that if we're lucky enough, you're gonna wake up tomorrow and get to try again. And that's all that you can really ask for.
Amazing.
Absolutely fantastic. Yeah, I think, you've shared, I'm so grateful for the time you've taken, AJ, to share your insights. It's been really insightful, inspiring, personally, to listening to you. I think not only listening to your background, and learning about your skills, your capabilities, and also your focus and mindset, but the way you articulate, these really tricky concepts that people have a hard time dealing with in the industry, talking about imposter syndrome and also growth development, etc. I think is really inspiring. So I've definitely taken a lot, and I dare say our listeners will as well. So again, thank you for taking the time to share that with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. I enjoyed it. I appreciate you guys having me on, and hopefully we get to do this again when I can tell you guys more about the secret project.
Yeah, no, that's definitely part 2, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool.